As we march toward the year 2025, brace yourselves. I think we are about to experience an unprecedented diffusion of cyber power, of cyber insecurity, and of opportunity. I'm not talking about a science room beaker where you watch little food coloring move around inside of a beaker. I'm talking about an unprecedented growth of internet connectivity, and I would say long overdue internet connectivity. This will allow a dissemination of ideas, of knowledge, and of capital further and faster than at any point in our history. And I believe that diffusion actually will challenge the entrenched and the established and start to create new opportunities for more inclusive governance, as well as economic opportunity. I think that the diffusion of cyber power, insecurity, actually work together to create a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape the world we want to live in, the world you want to live in. So let's talk about what that looks like. If we go flip forward here, I want to show you a picture of what the internet looked like in the year 2000. Not very big and not very reflective of the world. If you look at the internet today, it looks a whole lot closer to what we're looking at in terms of a geopolitical map. And you hear what Nina says here, if you look at Africa, the missing parts in terms of connectivity. But if we fast forward to the year 2025, 10 years from now, you're going to see a world that starts to look really different. This, my friends, I think is the beginning of diffusion. And I think we're going to witness some very interesting things in this space. First of all, look at just the amazing amount of people who come online in the global south. That, my friends, I think we'll see a lot of innovation. So let's talk about what this means. I believe that diffusion is really going to embolden new players, and we're going to witness this in three primary ways. The first one is personal power. That means you and me having access to software and services and devices and data to improve our daily lives, but also to create businesses and to bring about social change. The ability for us to arrest and redirect social movements to improve society is really exciting and fascinating, and I think is only going to get bigger. This, of course, makes governments nervous, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second area I think we're going to see a shift in power is with the rise of the influence of cities. I think cities are going to wield more power in the future than they have since the ancient world. Today, the UN tells us that over 54% of the world lives in cities. We're about to add 1 billion more people to urban environments in the next 10 years or more. The three top countries, 37% of the people in the world are going to live in cities. 37% of the world's city dwellers are going to live in China, India, and Nigeria. We're going to see the rise of megacities, over 40 megacities with 10 million or more people in them. Cities will be making decisions that once were in the realm of nation states about security, about safety, about public health, and about cyber. And the decisions they make there are going to increase their capital within their countries and on the international level to go and deal with changes, whether it's climate changes or social justice changes or other things. So really exciting. The third area is what I call the rise of multi-stakeholder governance. Governments really struggle with hard problems. Madeleine Albright once said, people talk to their governments about 21st century problems, and they do it on 20th century technology, and governments reply with 19th century policies. Hashtag, are you surprised? This is not sustainable. You know, governments, whether they're big democracies or whether they're authoritarian regimes, are finding they're having to work with multiple people, with the public sector, with the private sector, with NGOs. And I think this is a trend that is going to continue into the future, and I'm very excited about what that brings. But the shift in power also brings shifts in insecurity. And I want to talk about three of those. And these are rather sobering, and I think we need to keep our eye on them. The first one is what I would call surveillance societies. So you living in a mega city with 10 million plus people, you're going to want to have cameras and sensors and devices to help you understand how that city flows. We need to be really careful about what this means for privacy, for personal freedoms and security. And the same personal power that we're getting from social media and increased connectivity also creates an opportunity for governments to surveil us. And we have to make sure that that does not erode personal freedoms. What is that balance? You heard the director of Europol earlier talk about the need for increasing capabilities in law enforcement. How do we keep that balance? The second area is something I call cybersecurity norms. Today, there are about 40 countries in the world that have a declared military policy for using cyberspace. And there are 17 governments that have been outed or have admitted that they have offensive capabilities in cyberspace. What does that mean? That's our cyberspace, that world that connects us and gives us all that freedom. That is very fragile, and we've got to be careful about what the unintended consequences of there are. Today, governments like to get together and talk a little bit about establishing rules of the road, but that's really one military talking to another military, and you and I are not in the room. We think that needs to change, and that should change quickly. The private sector and NGOs and citizens should have a much broader view of how cyberspace should be used in the future. We live in an internet-dependent world and an internet-dependent economy, and we should not allow that to become a playground for national security issues. The third area I think is interesting is emerging technologies. There are cool technologies, but they scare people. Things like machine learning and Internet of Things and advanced artificial intelligence. These things will be disruptive. They will tear down old businesses and recreate new ones, and they will do it fast. And we as a society, I think, have to be ready to transition people, ready to equip people, ready to think about the future when those things start to happen. We can't allow ourselves to be drawn into sort of a regulatory shutdown where we keep scoping down innovation, because it will kill off the future of diffusion. I think at the end of the day, the opportunities for diffusion are really vast. I think about economic inclusion and growth. It's projected that we may have about 1 billion or more people exit poverty and start to move toward the middle class in the coming decades. That to me is phenomenal. Not just for inclusion of wealth, but the things that come with it: better health, better education, better opportunity. You think about what's in the global south and the world that Nina was just talking about. As you start to connect that and you find new business models, new innovation, new things are coming as people come online. Very excited about the world that that brings. I talked earlier about surveillance, but I think we also, you and I, have a responsibility in terms of transparency and accountability. We as individuals can apply that personal power to use open data, to use public data, to use social media to bring about change, whether it's a democracy or a despot. We can affect change by holding governments more accountable and businesses more accountable for what that world looks like. The third area, I think, is really things that haven't been invented yet in terms of environmental technologies that could help us better manage the resources of this planet, whether that's water, whether that's energy, whether that's other types of issues that we're starting to feel from climate change. There is a whole new world coming, and I would say most of that technology hasn't even been invented yet. So very excited about what that means. As we continue to think about diffusion and what the next 10 years are going to bring to us, I would encourage you to really think about 3 things. The growth in technology and connectivity will either divide us, meaning that we'll sort of fragment into very sort of isolated political or nationalistic views of the world, and this can be disruptive to the internet and things that Vint talked about at the very beginning that we do not want to see happen. It will imprison us, meaning we'll allow this sort of nature of surveillance and this clash of regulation to start to choke off innovation. That's a bad thing. Or it will improve us. And we will leverage the opportunity of connectivity, of collaboration, of coordination at an unprecedented scale to tackle fundamental problems facing our world today. I think that's where the future lies, and that's where I think diffusion really holds a huge opportunity for all of us. Thank you very much.